Bonjour everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video in which we have the pleasure of talking about the E50M, and this video is probably going to be dedicated to the fact that I think this tank is going to become the god of mediums when the 8.2 update drops. There are several reasons for why I think that, but before we jump into it, I'm just going to talk briefly about the tank and its history in World of Tanks Blitz. You already know the E50M to be one of a kind, simply because this one has this original playstyle that will make you prefer it over the traditional mediums like the T62A or even the Object 140, because this one actually has armor and you can truly use it, as you saw against the Sheridan bouncing off the upper part of my turret. This is what a crazy armor tank looks like, and obviously it's known among the meme community to be one of the best rammers out there, because having armor doesn't imply that you can't go fast, and the E50M proves it right. Now, that being said, you already know that the 8.2 update is going to change the current meta. Wargaming is nerfing hard pretty much all the heavy tanks for them to be not useless but less competitive on the battlefield, because Wargaming is upset about people playing heavies only nowadays. So it's gonna become the medium meta again. And with it comes several buffs to several tanks, E50M included. So what is changing about the E50M? I'll probably maybe show you briefly what's gonna change with statistics on the screen right now. But if we sum up, let's say that the gun of the E50M is gonna change. It's gonna reload faster, which is or implies that it's going to be quite a deadly gun, because I want to remind you that the accuracy of the E50M is the best out of all the mediums available in the game. But on top of that, Wargaming decided that it would be a good idea to buff the already quite strong armor of the E50M, especially on the turret. Nowadays, in the 8.1 update, the turret is approximately 260 millimeters armored. What does it imply? It implies that some tanks like the Chieftain NK6 or the VK91P, so tanks known to have a really good base penetration that is over 270 millimeters, are able to penetrate your turret cheeks. But after the update, it's gonna climb up to 280 millimeters, so roughly 20 more millimeters. And trust me, even if it doesn't seem like a lot on paper, in the game it's gonna make a whole difference, because it's gonna make it impossible to penetrate the turret without gold shell. And this is game changing for the E50M, because you are actually gonna become one tank that is extremely good in all down, because regardless of where your enemies are going to shoot, if they don't shoot with gold, it's impossible to penetrate. On top of that, I want to remind you that the E50M acquired a long time ago one of the greatest gun mantlets ever, because it literally takes the whole tank, and this is why this thing you're seeing right there is gonna become a tank you want to grind and acquire in your garage. But is it really gonna change the playstyle? Was truly for the best. Why is that? Simply because, as I already told you, if your turret is stronger, it's gonna make it even more effective in all down. Before, back in the days, when you played with E50M, if you really wanted to be able to make your targets bounce your tank, you had to peekaboo, which implies, like I'm doing right now against the WZ11GFT, that you wait for your opponent to show himself, you sneak a shot, and you go back to a safe cover from which they are not able to shoot you. Now, after that, you will be able to stay in front of some tanks, not all of them. For example, a WZ111GFT will still be able to penetrate you, so you still gotta be careful. But as long as you only show your turret and you wiggle a little bit, you should be fine. It was something already existing for the E50M, but here you are going to be able to do it more confidently. Something that will never change about the tank as well is how strong the side armor is, especially when you angle it. And this is exactly what you're supposed to do with it. Angle the tank by going side scrape and you're done. So yeah, all down and side scrape, the E50M is going to do both S-class. It's going to be impossible for you not to do a good game with it, as long as you know how to deal with your side armor. I want to remind you that having this kind of armor can be good for some stuff like bouncing shells, but it's also slowing you down regarding the other mediums. If you're in competition with them, you don't necessarily have the best top speed, but for sure you have the best armor to top speed ratio, and this is what's really interesting about it. Now, that being said, we could also talk about the main tank that are going to become meta, no, not meta, but OP in the upcoming meta. I talked about the E50M 2 or 3 days ago. I talk about the E50M right now. I talked also about the M48 pattern that I think is not going to change that much. But still, I'm happy to see that Wargaming is finally taking actions to make those tanks shine again on the battlefield. Because I know a lot of people are complaining about the heavies becoming useless, and I don't think it's going to be the case. They are going to become less effective, and they are going to stick to their role, aka being close combat and tanking shots. Because the first thing that you need to keep in mind when you're playing heavy tanks is that you're supposed to die for your team. That's pretty much what a heavy tank is like. It's a kamikaze with which you are able to go straight into the battlefield, bouncing shots and destroying your targets at close range. If you camp with a heavy, maybe change the class you're playing with, guys. Wargaming is changing the current meta to make those mediums shine again. Because when you take a look at the matchmaking, it's for the E50M, only pro players that are playing it. I truly don't see any average player playing the tank, because most of the players don't really know how to deal with it, because it's still quite a high tank and you don't have the best gun depression to fight off with. But at V42A2, for example, we don't see any on the battlefield right now, because the tank feels pretty useless. M48 pattern, M60, it's quite the same. M60 because it's rare, M48 pattern because it's useless. And the problem is, having all those tanks that are tech tree, except for the M60, but all of the others tech tree and not used, is kind of a waste for Wargaming. If they implemented them to be tech tree tanks, that's because Wargaming wants you to play them. And this is why the current meta is changing, because people are not playing them enough. And if they're not playing them enough, it shows that Wargaming failed something about them, because it implies that players would rather play something else than those tanks. And this is why the buffs were needed. From a matchmaking perspective, I feel like those tank Wargaming buffs are going to be extremely good in the hands of pro players. People that are already used to play those tanks correctly while not being buffed. But just imagine nowadays an E50M strongly armored on the battlefield, played by someone that has more than 3.5k WN8, more than 2.5k average damage. It's gonna be extremely deadly, but at least it will be fun for the guy playing it. Same for the EV4202 that has its overall top speed increased. Those changes are gonna make the mediums shine again, and yes, it's definitely an update that features everything the pro players were waiting for. When the medium meta was on, that was where the best players did the best game with their best mediums, because everything is suited for you to destroy everything with your mediums. Now, that being said, I would like to see what's your opinion, guys. Would you rather see something like that with the mediums shining on the battlefield, or something else? Because I want to remind you also that if Wargaming made, let's say, a tank destroyer meta like it was the case in the good old days, the main problem with this is that people are camping and it makes the game quite boring. When the mediums are in the current meta, it makes the games faster, simply because mediums are supposed to circle, are supposed to play aggressively, are supposed to go straight on their opponents. And this is how you make a game such as Blitz stay a Blitz game, aka a fast one, where every single battle is fast because people push in. Hopefully you enjoy, guys. If that's the case, feel free to subscribe, like, and share, and I'm gonna see you soon for a new video.